There's something undeniably stupid, but also kind of perfect about side pipes. They don't whisper, they don't blend in, they say, look at me, I make noise, and that's kind of the point, right? You're not chasing subtlety, you're chasing presence. But here's my hot take. Most side pipes sound like trash. Typically they're raw and loud for loudness sake, which ends up sounding messy. Like a rock concert in a shipping container. Still, when done right, that side exit can make even the most boring thing on four wheels feel alive. That sounds good. So what happens when you take that idea, the look and the energy, the chaos, and bolt it to something that's about as wild as a banker's haircut? And that's what we're doing today. Putting side pipes on a Lexus, not a race car, not a G-Wagon, a GX460. By the end of this video, you'll understand two things: why pipe geometry and crossover design matter way more than loud equals cool, and why some vehicles need a little more help sounding as good as they last. If you like loud ideas done right, hit subscribe. And if you like loud ideas done wrong, leave a comment. Either way, we're building something that's going to annoy your HOA or your neighbor's golden retriever. Now, let's talk about why this even makes sense. Now, side pipes have always been a statement, from Cobras to C3 Corvettes to G-Wagons. They've meant power, attitude, and usually a bit of middle finger energy. They scream, look at me, before the engine even turns over. The problem is they often scream for no reason. The sound that comes out, it's raw, it's violent, but it's rarely beautiful. Most side pipes are just dumping sound. They're not tuned, no crossover control, no merge, no acoustic balance, just noise. And that's where this gets interesting, because the Lexus GX460 is the polar opposite of that. Under the hood, it's got a 4.6 liter naturally aspirated V8, 301 horsepower, 329 foot-pounds of torque, full-time four-wheel drive, and these are solid numbers, but not exciting ones. This thing weighs over 5,000 pounds and still manages a 0 to 60 in a don't spill your latte 7.8 seconds. Back in 2022, it's stickered for around 56,000 MSRP. Nice, but far from exotic. Now let's compare that to a car with side pipes, the Mercedes-AMG 63. Same year, twin turbo V8, $156,000 MSRP with resale prices that ballooned over 200 during the madness of 21 through 23. Now, while that G-Wagon market crashed back towards reality, the GX has quietly held its value, and that's because Toyota and Lexus have a reputation. They're unkillable. If you buy one of these, change your oil twice a year, you'll see 200,000 miles without breaking a sweat. That kind of dependability became the new flex. The problem? Dependability isn't sexy. So, what if you could add just one part from the G-Wagon's drama, the side pipes, to the GX's bulletproof reliability, take something stoic and make it stupid fun? That's the balance we're chasing today, but of course you can't just slap pipes on the side and call it done. GX's V8 doesn't respond like the Mercedes twin turbo. It takes finesse, pipe diameter, crossover geometry, and outlet placement that all affect tone, scavenging, and the deep-throated burble that we're after. And yes, we've heard the critics already. What about ground clearance? Won't they get crushed off-road? Well, let's be honest. Most of these SUVs are crawling malls and not mountains. The goal isn't to just make it louder, it's to make it sound right. And by the end of this build, we'll test two systems, one basic straight-through setup and one using the new electric valve system with a carefully tuned crossover. We're going to prove that tone can be engineered, not just guessed at. All right, here it is. 2016 Lexus GX460 that's about to get a personality transplant. Now, from the outside, it's everything you'd expect a Lexus to be. Quiet, refined, and about as controversial as beige wallpaper. But underneath, it's the same frame Toyota's been using forever. It's tough as nails, and it's got enough room underneath to fit some ideas that would make no sense on paper. Now, we've already built this setup once before, and people lost their minds over it. Half of them said it looked incredible, and the other half said we ruined it, so naturally, we had to do it again. But this time, we're not using vacuum valves. We're upgrading to electric valves because when you're running side pipes, you probably want instant control. Silent when you want to sneak out of the neighborhood, and violence when you don't. And before anyone asks, no, we're not doing this for off-road performance. These pipes don't care about departure angles, and if you're worried about catching them, you're probably in the wrong video. This system is about sound, theater, and getting that sound to work with this V8 instead of against it. We're gonna show you two setups. A straight side pipe, raw, simple, just to hear what the motor really sounds like. And then our 5-star X-pipe system with electric valves, which is tuned for flow and tone. The goal, figure out if we can make side pipes actually sound good and not just loud. Now, Cody's been deep into fabrication all week, and you'll see him laying out tubing, cutting, tacking, and shaping the star pipe section. And while he's busy making sparks, I'll walk you through the part nobody talks about, the geometry, because that's really where the tone lives.
Now, the big advantage of doing in a system like this, aside from the aesthetic look of the side pipes, is going to be the elimination of these post-catalytic converters, which should free up a little flow and allow us to get the best sound possible. Let's see what Cody's going to come up with.
All right, so on this Lexus, we're going to take out this exhaust and get rid of it. We're going to build an X-pipe under the oil pan area. And the X-pipe is going to go out to 2 individual tubes that run out to the side and have side pipes. On the other side, on the passenger side here, we have to wire it together and have it go back into the stock system so that when he hits the button for the valve, it will either go through the side pipes and be loud, or hit the button again and it's going to go through the stock system, and you'll be driving comfortably down the highway and not have any drone or noise or whatever, not waking the neighbors. So at this point, we got to get this guy down, and then I got to start building the X-pipe in this area and figure out how that's all going to fit in here. Oh yes. Uh-oh. Oh, there's a whole nother clamp right here. So we can't get it out in one piece. And conveniently enough, there is a flange here. Inconveniently enough, it looks super rusted, and the nuts are no longer with us, and the bolt heads are no longer with us. So this is gonna have to get cut out. I'm gonna try and cut off the nut side, giving us a nice, even, flat surface to mate back up to, in case, for whatever reason, the customer doesn't like it and wants to put it back to stock. I don't wanna cut into any of these tubes, so cutting it off from the nut side, punching out the head of the other bolt on the other side, is probably gonna be the best bet. So let's grab the cutoff wheel and cut the nuts off. All right, now that I got the nuts cut off, it's as simple as basically just getting a punch and punching them out, and then everything should separate. Hopefully that's easier said than done. All right, got one. Oh God, it's coming down. Perfect. All right, so the first step on this Lexus is gonna be to make the X-pipe and then fit up the rest of the tubes to the X-pipe. So I went ahead and I started off making the X-pipe. Now we want to go back to the car and kind of put this in the general area. I have some 2 mandrel bend 90s that should go right off of the manifold into this, and that way the X pipe will be centered to the vehicle, to the exhaust ports at least, and then we should be able to build off of there. So let's go see how this fits on the car. All right, so not bad. Need to adjust a little bit, but this should be okay. So now that the 90s go into the X pipe, I should be able to tack this in place and then start building the system. And on the passenger side, we're gonna go back into the OEM exhaust, so when we hit the valves for the quiet mode, it'll be nice and quiet. All right, so I got this tacked up, and before I weld everything solid, I'm gonna go put this back into the car and make sure that everything still lines up good. And if it does, I'm gonna mark the other side, and then I'll pull that down, tack it, put it back in, make sure everything fits perfect. Then I'm gonna bring it back down here, weld it all up solid, and then throw it back in there. And then I'll tack the flanges on to this exhaust. Now to see if she fits. Yes, very nice. Next step would be to tack the flanges on in place. That way we know it's gonna fit back into the same spot exactly. Pull everything down, weld everything solid, put it back up. From there, we're gonna build off of these ears. We're gonna kind of go up and start facing the rear. Then I'm gonna put V-bands on that. Once I do that, I should be able to start building the connection point that goes to the stock system. So we're getting close. I made the up and over tube so that I can tack this guy in place wherever that's gonna live. That way, this is gonna get us in the right direction to go outward to our tips on the side pipe. So at this point, I'm gonna tack this guy on here. We're gonna take this back out and we're gonna line up the other side and then tack that one. That should all be good and that shouldn't come back down again. So I'll weld everything solid after that's done and then on to making the side pipes. All right, so we're at the next step where we're gonna go back into the stock system. We kind of have this blowed side pipe figured out. We're just gonna go straight and kind of out the back. So now we're gonna go from this point into a tube, and it's gonna kind of follow right next to the passenger side here. Then, you know, we're gonna put another V-band here so that everything can remove easily, and then it's just gonna go straight into the stock muffler section. So in order to do that, we're gonna go into this piece and the top part of the X pipe using a 45 or a 90. We need to mark the ends of this tube so that we can get the right cut. And once I get it cut on each end, it should just kind of slide over, and then I'll have to back grind a little bit to make it fit good. And once I get this fit good, I'll be able to trace the X pipe, make a hole, cut that out, and then this guy will just sit right in there, allowing us for access into the stock system. And then weld it all up. All right, so now that we got this coped out, ready to go onto the X pipe. Now we gotta draw it out so we can get a cut. You could just use a regular marker and trace it out, but as you can tell, it doesn't quite reach where you need it to. This is where Tycon comes into play, where you have the long nib markers, and this gets you right into the crevice, the nice tight spot where you can't really get with a normal Sharpie. and that allows for a perfect cut every time. So I want to shout out Tycon for hooking me up with these long nib markers. These things are absolutely the best. So we got the X pipe in, we got the little tube that's going to the stock system in, and now we're basically ready to make the side pipe. We're gonna start with going straight back to this part of the frame, then we're gonna kind of bend down, we're gonna go over under the frame rail, and kind of start going straight back in between the step and the frame. Once we kind of get that going straight, it should be pretty easy, and at the end here, we're gonna go 45 over into our two tips in this general area. So with that, let's start making the side pipe. Now that we got the first piece cut, we want to be just by the frame rail, and then we're gonna 45 down, and this is gonna be our base. We're gonna basically just tack this piece together, the V-band, the straight to the 45, and then we'll be able to twist it, and I'll grab another 45, and we want to go under the frame, and then we're gonna 90 parallel with the frame and the step. So let's get this all tacked together, and then we can start making more measurements. Alright. So that's gonna go right underneath the frame. We're not exactly where we want to be. Maybe I have to add a little bit, like 1 or 2 inches or so, and then we'll put a 90 here, and then we're gonna just run all the way back, and that's gonna be our side pipe. All right, so we got this fully welded up. It's in place, it should be there forever now. Next, we're gonna put these in. I got these welded up for the most part. These are gonna go in, and then I'm gonna be able to finish the rest of the side pipe piece by piece. So we just got done making the Y pipes for the tips, and I have these 45-degree angle cuts, and this is gonna be the tip itself. So these are gonna go on here, and once I weld them together, that's gonna be the tip, and that's gonna protrude out from the side, giving the awesome side pipe sounds. So I still have a little bit of work because I have to swedge these up and cut one side down in order to make this work, but it all starts with making the Y pipes work. And that's where we're at. From this point, we're gonna put these out on the side pipe itself, and then we're gonna start lining up the tips. So let's go fit this guy up on the car. All right, so here's the side pipe. Oh my God. Let's try this again. Yeah. So here's the side pipe, and this is where the tip is kind of gonna come out at. We're gonna go like right about there, just in front here. So I need to make a piece that's roughly 4 inches long, 3 inches long. That puts the tip out in the right, the Y pipe out in the right area. That way I can get the tips on here and have everything line up perfectly. I'm gonna go kind of in between half inside and outside of this rocker, and that way it doesn't burn anything. It's not sticking out too far, so someone's gonna burn their legs or anything. And then you want to see it so it's not going to be inside, so we want just like a happy medium. It's going to poke just a little tiny bit, but if you're walking by it, you'll never touch it. So I got these swedged up and tacked into place, and this is generally the idea how it's going to look. And now we have some really nice looking tips for the side pipe of this Lexus. I had the straight pipe on for the side pipe, and I had the angle coming out to get the tips in the right direction. So now we're gonna tack the tip section on the straight pipe. Once I get everything kind of in place, I'll be able to tack the tips in the best position on the car.
Now, one of the big criticisms for the last system that we did on the newer GX was that the side pipes would be the lowest point and they would hit if you were doing any sort of serious rock crawling, which, yeah, I know they would. That's not really the point. It was more of a kind of a feature to have on your car that was cool, but that got me curious. How much clearance do we actually have? This car has not been modified. It is a stock GX, stock ride height. Let's just do the test and see how close it actually is. Now, this is a very specific obstacle I've chosen to try to get this as close as we can in this sort of situation. And I'm sure there could be something where you're coming off a rock or something else, but this should give a pretty real world example of light crawling that you might be doing. And looking underneath there, yeah, it gets pretty close. And I'm sure having the pipes on there is definitely gonna have it be a lot closer, but how close is it actually gonna be? Well, we're gonna have to put them on to find out. Now, this is the focus of the system, the valves. Now, if you remember our last system, we're switching from a vacuum controlled system to an electronic controlled system, which is basically going to supply power to the valve to control it electronically, instant on, instant closed. Now, set up for that, really all you need is a power and ground, and then that supplies the power to the valve, which in turn opens and closes it via key fob. So super easy, makes a lot of sense, and it's really the focus of the system because without it, we have more or less a regular exhaust. So it's either gonna be silence or violence and really nothing in between. Now let's talk about this X pipe or star pipe, and this is really where the tone lives. Now, over the years, I've done a ton of testing, and I've shared some of that testing with you guys on different variations of merges and crossovers. And in my experience, what I found is this 45-degree angle merging X ends up having the best tone and less disruption of power. If you go a straight 90, depending on where you put this X pipe, you could have very good scavenging, but you lose some of the tone. Now, if you do a bisecting one where it's a long curve and they kind of split, you end up bringing the tone up, but that ends up messing with the flow. And this has been dyno tested by me. When I talk to you about this being one of the better merges that balances those, there's really nothing that's changed my mind. Now, I'm not saying this is gonna make the best power, and I'm not saying this is gonna sound the most unique, but if you're trying to balance those two, there's nothing that I found that comes out any better than our Smooth Merge X. But as you can see, this really isn't our Smooth Merge X. It's a star pipe, a 5-legged pipe. Now, we've done this before. We did this on the last variant of our crossover side pipe Lexus build. And the two issues that we were running into was how do we get it back to the exhaust, which is why the 5th leg exists, and the closeness to the transmission. Now, after about 30,000 miles on both of those cars, I can report back that I'm not seeing any paint flaking or heat presence in any of the components there. On one of those cars, we did put some reflective tape on the trans pan, but 30,000 miles and not even so much as any paint flaking on the trans pan, I'd say that the airflow across this is good enough to keep it cool, not cause any damage. And the way we have this routed, it's fairly removable if you ever have to drop the pan for any reason. So I was happy with that, especially after testing, but the one thing I wasn't happy with is where we had the fifth leg coming out of the X-pipe was right in the center, meaning that when it would divert to go back to the exhaust, it really wasn't a clean transition. And that got me thinking, I really wanted to put this somewhere a little bit better for flow and tone, because ultimately any X-pipe, it doesn't matter where you use it, is always going to create a certain amount of turbulence. And ideally, you want that sound and turbulence to be mellowed back out by the remaining length of the exhaust system. So having that thing as close as possible helps take advantage of that tone, but also it optimizes for the pulses of the engine. They're not slowed down due to the energy from the thermal loss as the exhaust gas is cooling back down, so you could still get some really good scavenging there. But you want it close, and if you have an accident and you throw something in the middle of it, you're disrupting that whole thing. So while I don't think a star pipe's optimal, I do think that this is going to sound pretty good. In fact, I know it sounds good when we had that pipe coming out of the middle there, but will it sound better now that we have it in my opinion, a more logical place, especially when considering the exhaust going to the rear. So I had Cody keep our design of our smooth merge X, and I also had him change the location of where this was going at, and he came up with a really smart way, beautiful that it went in there, and I think this is gonna sound and flow much, much better. Now we're getting super close to being able to actually hear this thing. Cody's just got a few more hangers and some welds to button up before we're gonna be able to get it outside, so that way you guys can hear it. But we're also gonna find out just how close these pipes actually come to scraping if you were to try to take it rock crawling.
Alrighty, so we got the side pipe all welded up, ready to go. Now it's just time to put on this motor, and then I'm gonna stick this guy back in the car and fully bolt it up. Then I'll be able to fully weld the tips on correctly, and that way they're gonna look the best. And I like doing that on the car just in case something kind of goes left or right, up or down, whatever it may be. So that's gonna be last step.
So I already know that there'll be a few of you passing through our comment section wanting to educate us on why we should have just gone with a Y pipe going to the rear muffler and then just done pipes out the side. And I'm gonna show you exactly why. What I had Cody do is we used some scrap here, and he's fabbing up just some raw, straight side pipes, because I'm gonna prove to you about how the X actually mellows the sound out and makes it a little bit more sporty, classy, but still keeps it aggressive. So that way you guys can actually hear the difference between just dumping it out the side and dumping it out the side right. right, now truth be told, I'm doing these dyno numbers for you guys at home. I typically know about what to expect, which really isn't much, but sometimes I'm surprised by some of the findings, and I'm kind of glad that we dumped this thing on the dyno, because what we got here is a 200 horsepower run from stock, valve closed 205, a 5 horsepower gain, valves open 206.7, 6 horsepower gain, almost 7, but that's not the real surprise. The real surprise is right about 3,600 from valve closed to stock is about a 20 horsepower bump in that low end, mid-range-ish area, which is kind of surprising. The other surprising thing is the valve open actually doesn't make as much power as the valve closed there, which kind of can be expected. You're probably losing exhaust gas velocity in this area right here due to the valves being open. It's slowing down from it being so free-flowing, where when it's channeled, it's probably a little bit more high speed, giving us a little bit more low-end power. But that being said, it's still making power with both systems. It's just with the valve shut, you're making a little more, which means when you're driving around in quiet mode, this thing is almost just as fast as when it's shut, meaning we optimize that exhaust system by freeing up some restrictions. And it's fun, it sounds cool. What more can I say? Woo, that thing's close. The nice thing about having an exhaust like this is if you get really close to gravel, you can just clear it out of the way. Now here's the takeaway. Side pipes are ridiculous, always have been. They're not about efficiency or function, they're about attitude. They exist to say, I don't need a full exhaust because I'm too busy making noise. On a stock Lexus, that logic makes even less sense, and somehow that's exactly why I love it. It takes a certain kind of passion, or maybe insanity, to modify something this civilized in a way that defies logic. But that's what car culture really is. It's not about dyno sheets, it's about expression. Every lift kit, every track setup, every side pipe is just a different way of saying, this is who I am. Putting switchable side pipes on a mall crawler isn't that different from chasing a high ramp travel index score. It's just how you flex your taste. One says I conquer mountains and the other one says I conquer boredom, and honestly, both are valid. If you take anything from this build, it's that you can have fun and be smart about it. Merge your banks, tune your flow, keep it on a switch, make noise when it counts, but be polite when it doesn't. Yeah, and you saw what happened on the dyno. Not earth-shattering numbers, but that's not the point. We proved tone can be engineered. We showed you what you give up in ground clearance and what you gain in character, and that's a trade I'll take every time. So are side pipes stupid? Yeah. Do they make sense? Not even a little, but if you can make them sound good, really good, maybe that's reason enough. Now drop a comment and tell me which setup you'd actually run, the raw side dump or the 5-star X system. And once again, if you like loud ideas done right, hit subscribe. And if you like loud ideas done wrong, you'll fit right in here. Stay loud, stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next pull.